Joan, can you do a roll call for us, please?
Charles Long, Chris Mortensen,
Here.
Michael Schaaf,
Here.
Priscilla Manuelito, Kevin Mitchell.
Great, we have a quorum. We'll go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and have our Pledge of Allegiance. Is there anybody here that could volunteer to lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance? Raise your hand. I know you know it. Ms. Hanks, can you do the pledge for us? Thank you. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, do I have a motion on the minutes? Or on the agenda, excuse me.
I make a motion that we approve the agenda.
Go grab. Joan? There's been a motion to approve the agenda. Roll call, please, Joan. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Hyatt, can you tell us about the minutes just for the rest of the members of the board, what you were telling me?
Mr. Mortensen, members of the board, we're going to pull the minutes from last meeting. We need to make some corrections.
Okay, so do I hear a new motion to approve the agenda minus the minutes, and we'll issue an amended agenda the next go around?
I make a motion that we approve the agenda with the removal of the minutes from last meeting.
Thank you. A motion's been made. Roll call, please, Joe.
Miss Manuelito, Mr. Schaaf, Mr. Mortensen.
Yes. Number 4 on our agenda, approval of consent agenda items.
I'll go ahead and motion to approve consent item agenda.
Joan, a motion's been made. Roll call, please.
Miss Manuelito,
Yes.
Mr. Schaaf,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen.
Yes.
Can
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question?
No, go ahead. Go ahead, please,
Okay.
Ms. Manuelito.
The resolution for the board meetings, are those the ones that are indicated going to be the ones that are going to be away?
Mr. Long, or not Mr. Long, you kind of have a resemblance, but. Mr. Mortensen, Ms. Manuelito, those are all for away trips. So as you know, whenever I approve a trip, I put it on the agenda just so you know what trips are happening across the district.
Oh, I'm... The way... The open meetings?
Which resolution are you talking about?
I am
Manuel, I'm
talking
sorry.
about the open meetings.
B and C?
Just B.
B.
You're correct, those are away.
Okay. And I'm thankful Tegai's on there and Rayma's on there. But I'll go ahead and stick with my motion, but I would like to ask the board later on if we can add through, but I'll wait on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss. Go ahead.
And I see that we have Tohatchi for October 13th. I would like to see if we can move that one to maybe a November meeting. Is that what? Or what's that?
You're wanting to move the Tohatchi board meeting to November sometime?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can probably, I could ask Mr. Hyatt to present an updated calendar, and we can look at it. I'm sure it's not a problem. At this point in the year, I don't anticipate any issues.
Okay.
So that'd be another one section.
You got what you need, Mr. Hyatt? Okay. Let's go ahead and proceed to number 5 on our agenda, study circle. And A is public comment. I've got 4 here. We're going to, just because of the number of public comments that we have, we're going to go ahead and enforce the 3-minute rule. But let's start with the top one here on the top of the stack, which is Kim Brown. Thank you for coming. Go ahead.
Okay, board members, I know most of you, my name is Kim Brown, and I'm the business manager for Middle College High School. And I'm here tonight to talk about a topic that came up in discussion at the May 21st board meeting. We submitted our 18-19 budget documents to the district for approval, and we understand that parts of the budget are being questioned in public reports, perhaps without the full context of the entire budget picture. As with any organization's budget, there are reasons that are not apparent in the face of the budget or as to why or how the budget is set the way that it is. At the May 21st board meeting, Mr. Hyatt mentioned that he would specifically talk about our carryover cash balance at the June 4th meeting. So this evening I would like to provide you with some information about our carryover cash balance that's not explained in the budget or the budget documents. So Middle College High School has historically observed a practice to set aside operating reserves. The reserves are set aside for multiple purposes: payment of expenses that will occur prior to receiving our first SCG payment for the new year, emergency property replacement in case of catastrophe, reductions of funding for various reasons. We're currently in the process of establishing an actual board policy for operating reserves. And Middle College High School has intentionally set aside funds in anticipation of the 20-student increase that we had requested here in the recent past. Middle College High School was able to coordinate this cash balance accumulation over the past few years with improvements in the economy and with changes in conservative administrators. Over the past 3 or 4 years, the unit value has begun to climb again after the statewide budget declined. The fiscal year 14-15, Wally Feldman worked his last year before he retired. And during this year, New Mexico school budgets were starting to rise up out of the declined state. But Mr. Feldman's fiscal oversight remained conservative. So in 15-16, Connie Torres, who replaced Mr. Feldman, followed in his footsteps. She continued on with his conservative practices as the school's head administrator. She herself also retired in December of the 16-17 school year. Dr. Hunter took over as head administrator of the school in January of 2017. And again, Dr. Hunter continued the conservative practices of Mr. Feldman and Ms. Torres. The first year of Dr. Hunter's administration, the unit value decreased slightly, but the second year, the unit value increased again, resulting in larger cash reserves. Now, we're at a comfort level where we are able to increase instructional programs and address property maintenance issues while maintaining that sufficient operating reserve. Middle College High School is beginning to address some needs that were postponed during those economic downturn years.
Ms. Brown, I'm sorry to interrupt you. About 15 more seconds.
Okay.
Thank you.
Our portable buildings are in need of some repairs, and our parking lot needs to be re-gravelled, and we are currently receiving quotes on those repairs. We've increased our staff by 1 person. In the 18-19 school year, we are going to increase our curriculum to be more STEM focused. And so I just wanted to thank you for this opportunity to provide some explanation as to what that cash balance is there for. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Christian Black. Go ahead. Thank you. We appreciate it. We were just trying to, I apologize, we were just trying to keep to the time limit so we can hear from as many people as we can. Go ahead.
My name's Christian Verdugo Black. I'm a former student at Middle College, and I just wanted to use this time to explain what Middle College has done for me, because I do understand that the charter is possibly at stake here. And I chose to go to Middle College because they've proven themselves time and time again that this is what they are good at. They are good at helping you. When I started, there were, I would say, roughly 80 students, and then shortly after that, they increased to 100. And I still liked the fact that even with that many students, they knew you on a personal level. I would go to Dr. Hunter, Dr. Torres, and any member of the staff, and I could ask them for help, and they knew exactly how to help me because they knew my personality. And I think that's a very good program for a lot of students, because not everyone's the same, and they realize that. And this program helps you learn independence because your parents can't be there with you. And so it helped me learn independence. It helped me learn to speak up. And after Middle College, because I graduated in 2016, I now graduated from UNM main campus with a Bachelor's of Science in Psychology. And the reason I'm bringing that up is there were times where I wanted to give up, and I was like, I'm done. But with the help from my former classmates and the former staff that I worked with, they pushed me to keep going and to do what I wanted to do because they knew that's what I wanted. And I just wanted to say that because I think it is a very good program. And that's my piece. Thank you for your time and for listening.
Thank you, Christian. We appreciate your time. Thank you. Sabrina Leba, please. Thank you for being with us.
My name's Sabrina Lamba, and I'm a former student of Middle College High School. And speaking on behalf of it to convey to you all the things it's done for me. Middle College was always so much more than a leg up in education. When I entered Middle College, it was very refreshing. You felt like you belonged there, and it felt like it was just one big family. Partially because it was, 80 to 100 students, and you got to know everyone, and not only that, but the faculty really cared about you. And it's always been very inclusive and made me feel like I had somewhere that I belonged to. I never felt like I was unheard or ignored in Middle College, and the faculty always immediately addressed any concerns that I had about the school or anything else. One thing Middle College has always done for me is that it taught me time management, organization, and responsibility and independence, and I'm really grateful to it for making it an easier transition into actual UNM college. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out. We appreciate it. Thank you. Stephanie Mortensen, I believe, is our last one. Thank you, Stephanie.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephanie Mortensen. I'm the parent of a senior currently attending Middle College and of a child that has graduated from Middle College. I would like to begin by referencing page 2 of the 2017 GMCS District Report Card found on the NMPED website. ironically titled Accountability. This page places emphasis on 15 schools in the district that are being monitored and are also among the lowest performing schools in the state. Middle College is not one of them. I would also like to point out that the GMCS district itself, along with MCHS and 13 other schools in the district, earned C's on their report card. Yet MCHS is the only one under scrutiny. MCHS became a concern at the same moment that McKinley Academy was coincidentally being promoted. Finally, as some of you may know, my daughter Brianna was diagnosed with a brain tumor while attending MCHS. MCHS and staff supported her and helped her continue on the path of higher learning. I would like to close with a statement from Brianna. I was a middle college student from 2014 until 2016, when I graduated with both my diploma and associate's degree. I am currently working in Washington, D.C. as a foreign service intern for the U.S. Department of State, and I owe every ounce of my success to the education I received at MCHS. I view this opportunity I once had as a sophomore as the gift that keeps on giving. I was granted 2 years of free college education in an authentic college environment. I was challenged and trusted with additional responsibility concerning my education that most kids my age were not. The staff at the middle college put an arm around me and provided me with all of those tools I needed to thrive as a young college student. My experiences my sophomore through senior year encouraged and prepared me to continue pursuing a higher education, unlike many of my peers. I did not fear attending a larger institution because I was ready. I had a degree. I was a freshman, but I was immediately accepted into a program because I already completed my basics. And this sparked the beginning of my career in journalism. I am still a young student with a world of opportunities ahead of me, but I fully recognize that the crucial decision I made 5 years ago to attend Middle College High School is the reason why I am where I am today. And I would not want to be anywhere else. I would like to consider myself a middle college success story. I am one of many success stories because my charter school equipped all of us with the tools of leadership and independence. So why revoke a charter that has done so much good within our community? It has certainly changed my life. Recently, I have considered where I would be without MCHS, and the thought haunts me. I think of how people are seriously considering depriving hundreds of young leaders from having the same opportunity I did. And it boggles my mind. It simply does not make sense. And it is not fair. As a graduate of this institution, I will continue to fight alongside my community for this charter because MCHS is a great school run by even greater people. I can only hope to make a fraction of the impact they have made in my future endeavors. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Stephanie. We appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, we received 3 more public comment requests after the deadline. Do you have a preference of whether we should hear them or not?
I think they were placed in the back. I don't think they were brought up here, so I don't mind hearing them.
Great.
That's
We'll
my
go
opinion.
ahead. That's fine with me. I just wanted to get your opinion on it. Alyssa Trujillo. Welcome, Alyssa.
Hi. So my name's Alyssa Trujillo. I just recently graduated middle college, high school, and so I am speaking on behalf of the school. I just want to say that I think middle college was just like a great experience for me. I started halfway through my 10th grade year, and I will say it's not for everyone, but that's in a good way. Just as high school, wasn't for me, it's for some people, and a traditional high school is for some people, and then there's also, middle college. It's kind of like a new environment. It's sort of like a second way to gain education, and I think what makes middle college unique is that it builds a lot of skills that you don't typically get in high school, and one of the biggest skills that I think I learned from it was independence, and that was because I had to learn in a college environment. I I was ready to move on to the next step, and it's a good kind of like in between college and high school. You know, it's a good step up from high school, but it's not exactly, you know, you're not just thrown into college like you would if you were just graduated high school. And so I think I learned a lot of independence, and I feel like, you know, having, for example, having to drive myself to school, you know, that in a way was preparing me for college, because we have to, you know, get our own transportation, or, you know, get our own meals, or whatever it is. But at the same time, I also had middle college staff who were always there. You know, they knew you by name, they would say hello to you, they were always there to check up on you. I never felt like I was alone, but at the same time, I had the ability to as the others said, you know, get time management, responsibility. I learned what it's like to experience college, but I also had that help from middle college staff. And I think that revoking the charter would be a big mistake, because there's a lot that middle college has that a traditional high school doesn't have, and in a good way. I think it's meant for people who are ready to take on the next step and to expand their education. And because of middle college, I'm going straight into what I want to do when I go to college. I'm going to UNM, and I'm going to be going into dance right away, because I already got my associate's degree, and so now I'll be really taking on what I want to do with my profession. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Lynn Heeneman, please. 3 minutes. Can you do it?
Won't be easy.
Come on. Let's talk
I'll try
faster.
to honor the 3 minutes, but I'll, in light of that, good evening, members of the board and so on. I want to tell you a story under the 3-minute thing. I want to tell you a story about our oldest boy. He wasn't perfect, but he was a good boy. An excellent, even really a model student. He achieved good grades. He was on a winning basketball team. He was part of an award-winning choir and band and more. And because we lived outside of town at the time during his junior and senior years, he had a car to drive back and forth to school and practices. So he did well. But at the end of his senior year, way at the end, he drove out of town for a party. He didn't have permission to go. He partied too much. He drank too much beer, and he got picked up on the way home and got a DUI. Were we as parents upset? You bet. So we disowned our son, kicked him out of the house, said he was old enough to know better. Did we do that? No, we didn't do that, of course not. We spoke with him, we monitored his car use and privileges, and we kept him as our son. He then graduated from high school, went on to the University of Minnesota, where he got his bachelor's in architecture and his master's degree in higher ed, and went on to be director and president of several national Native American organizations. This is how I see the situation at Middle College High School. After being an exemplary school for years, and I've been to the school, I've been to their board meetings, concerns have been raised about the school's performance. Some think it has misbehaved, or that this A school has gone down in its grades, so the district wants to kick it out of the house. Apparently on the state school report card system, MCH's school grade has dipped. But there have been questions, I don't know the 3 minutes allow me to explain that, but there have been questions about the design of that school grading system since it was implemented. If you take a school that's got 10%, it's based on, part of it's based on student growth. If you got a school that's scoring student scores at 10%, they go up to 20%. That's 100% student growth. But if you're already at 80 and you go up to 81, that's only 1.25% growth. So there's, you know, if you're strong, it's kind of hard to keep up, because the state set scores where basically student growth has to keep going. So I want to share with the board some data, hand this out to you. I hope you can look at it, and I hope you're pleased with what you see. I sought this, I got it, I was able to get a hold of it and provide it to you. And what it does is show some data that might be a little different than some of that you've received recently on scores of middle college, high school, And it shows in the past year how those scores are actually going up. So I ask you to consider that Middle College High School has been a special and important, even exemplary part of Gallup McKinley County School System, part of our family, part of our system. Please keep it. Guide it, give it oversight and support if that's what's needed, but help keep it going. Because we had our oldest boy, then we had another one. The family was enriched by 2. I support the new academy, but I support the continuation of the Middle College High School. I don't think they're identical. I don't think they will be identical. So thank you very much. Ode.
Thank you, Mr. Heeneman. I appreciate it. I knew you could do it in 3 minutes. I knew you could do it. Thank you. Our last person is Valerie Long.
Yeah.
Good evening, board members. My name is Valerie Long. I am a Rock Springs community member, which is not too far from here. And I'm a parent of 6. I'm a single parent of 6 kids. One of those kids is currently in the middle college, and one is to step into middle college. And I've had 2 previous daughters go through middle college. And it's basically part of embezzling that mindset for my kids to have it go on to their siblings also. My daughters who have graduated from the program have excelled in the college atmosphere and were ready for the academic field of study after they graduated from the middle college. And it's really not where I felt that they had to. They actually wanted to. They had that desire to see that there was this program out there that could push students as opposed to having a traditional background, which was Rehoboth. I came from Rehoboth too. And from finishing earlier than their classmates, this has enabled them beyond, and not only academically, but empowering their minds as females. And it's not where you want to just kind of push your kids. You want them to have that desire to say, I can do better. What is it I can do? And especially being a Native American and a single parent, I want what my kids can do, and I can see this this middle college, it's free. I mean, I was out there paying tuition to Rehoboth, not really seeing that, oh my gosh, there's something out there, especially for Native Americans. I'm also a board member of the Governing Council of the Middle College since November 2017. I was given this privilege to be part of the charter schools, and I can see how it operates and how it functions, taking the continuing education they give to us. I can now see how this 16-year-old program has advanced many young students to be role models in our community. I am also speaking on the behalf of being involved in the mission of education of our youth and Native American students who have gone through the program. Coming from graduating from UNM just this past fall, I have my master's in dental hygiene. And I found out that I'm the first across the nation to have that. And also when I graduated from NAU, when the program wasn't even there at UNM, I also was a pioneer in dental hygiene also. So I really want to see it to where we can push students and not inhibit them, where we can enable them and empower them, and see that there is really no animosity. We have great minds. We are privileged to be United States citizens. And isn't education the main goal overall? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. That concludes our public comment section of our agenda. We go down here into the report section B, number 1, superintendent report. Mr. Hyatt, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mortensen. I have several things I'm going to discuss tonight. I'm going to do them rather quickly since we have other important business tonight and action items. want to start out by talking about a couple grant opportunities, professional development opportunities for our teachers and our principals. As you are aware, members of the board, we have some opportunities to apply to the state of New Mexico for partnerships regarding teachers pursuing excellence and principals pursuing excellence. We are still awaiting the opportunity to see what we might get as far as teachers pursuing excellence, what schools we get in. We do have an interview later this month to advocate for some schools. For principals pursuing excellence, we did receive word that it looks like three school principals will be involved in principals pursuing excellence next year. The state has accepted Through Mid, Roosevelt Elementary, Indian Hills, Stagecoach, Chi Dodge, and Saigai. Now Roosevelt, as you know, that principal is over Lincoln and Roosevelt, and so that will actually, both schools, even though at the particular time that we applied, we did not know that we were going to join them next year. Since then, both schools will receive that opportunity.
Mr. Hyatt, repeat the schools one more time.
Through
please.
Mid,
Okay.
Roosevelt/Lincoln Elementary, Indian Hills Elementary, Stagecoach Elementary, Chi Dodge Elementary, and Saigai High School.
Thank you.
In addition, as you know, last year we rolled out a new initiative where we are providing school supplies for all students so that no longer we have lists that go home to parents where they have to provide those items. We're going to expand that this year and put more dollars to that effort. Specifically, I think last year there was some problem with all the supplies being at the school site and parents and students not feeling that they received anything because we kept it at the school. This year, we are looking at providing a packet of supplies that every student will receive, in addition to the extra supplies that teachers or classrooms need. This will up the increase of dollars spent, hundreds of thousands of dollars. But again, this is our commitment to meeting the students' needs in the classroom so that we're not putting the burden of their education as much as possible on the parents' backs. As you know, we will be starting through elementary hopefully about 2 months from now. So we're ready to break ground, pretty close to at least. So we're excited for that opportunity for that community. It's going to be a nice addition to the other mid-school, which is new, and hopefully in the near future, hopefully we can also get approved for through high school. I will get that information to you. I did not check the bid. The next one is Lincoln Elementary. It is under construction, as you know. If you've had a chance to drive by, it's moving fairly quickly. We've had great weather, and that contributes to how fast the buildings get built in New Mexico, especially in our area. And so if the weather continues and things go well, we're expecting sometime in the middle of winter to be able to occupy that building. If it goes too much longer than, say December, maybe January, then we'll consider whether we want to move in the summer for the following school year or whether we want to try to move over during the school year. It usually takes about 3 days or so to make the transition. We have some exciting news. Our last elementary, the oldest one in the district, is finally also, hopefully will be rebuilt. And that's Red Rock Elementary. Through L and Red Rock were our oldest. So we have met with PSFA, and we will be going to the council, PSCOC, to request funding for Red Rock. I don't know the timeline yet, but that request will happen in August. In addition to that, we have great news for the Tehachapi area. We're hoping also we're going to take to the PSCOC again, these are pending school board approval for Tehachapi High School to be remodeled. We want to make sure, it might be a partial remodel, a partial tear down. As you know, the funding for schools these days is different than the old days. And so if we were to take the funding that they would give us for Tehachapi High School and demolish it and build brand new, we would get a school half the size. With that, for example, that cafeteria area, I would say, some classroom areas, the shop area, and the gym for sure, those would be better remodeled because of the capacity that they hold. So we would have more square footage per student than we would if we rebuilt the whole entire school. So some of those decisions will be determined. It'll take some engineering or some engineers to look at the engineering of those buildings, what we can and can't do. and to make sure that we can utilize them through a remodel. Staffing with respect to next school year is probably, actually it is the best as far as progress in finding staff this year than we've seen in the last 5 years, and I think if you compared it over the last several decades, it would probably be one of the best years also. We had a very low, in comparison to previous years, a very low attrition for our teachers specifically, and so we are probably at a place right now where we're typically at in July or mid-July as far as the openings, and so that's a positive thing. The sooner we can find teachers and hire them, the better off we are with respect to getting school started with teachers in the classrooms. Last year, as a reminder, we had 7 openings when school started. There were some extra as the year went on as far as core areas and classroom teachers. We typically have about 10 special education openings at the start of the school year. Special education teachers are tough to find. I'd released today a press release regarding raises. I will provide a copy of that to you tonight also. We just wanted to notify the public specifically about the approximately $2.9 million that will go towards staff raises this next school year. That's an exciting opportunity that we have to be a part of as we provide that not only to our staff, but I think those who understand economics understand that that's a big boost for the McKinley County economy also. I will not be discussing a middle college budget this evening. I actually will discuss that or give information as we enter into a hearing, and we'll provide all the information there. As far as our budget, we will likely need a special meeting, and I'll get with all of you on a date for that, for our special meeting. It's probably going to be closer to the end of June. Giovanna, Ms. Hanks, do you have any other information of when you would like that special meeting to be?
Mr. Hire, members of the board, probably within the next week, I apologize, probably 2 weeks. The Public Education Department today released final budget applications that will be due June 18th. We have had a significant delay at the state level in receiving our federal programs information. I received that final information for many of those programs this morning. So in about 2 weeks' time, I will have the remainder of those done. Operational and other local programs are complete, but due to the delay at the state level for federal programs, I have kind of held off just so that I can present a complete budget package to you.
Thank you. Mr. Mortensen, members of the board, if you could provide me some times where you will not be available over the next couple of weeks, we'll start with that and see if we can find out it's difficult to get a date set. We at least obviously need 3 board members, so we'll work to have all 5. Last few items. I think that we've had a good close to the school year. Very little problems that we were able to see within schools across this vast district. We have been preparing for the next school year for several months. Actually, we almost start preparing for the next school year when school year starts because of the effort it takes to get things ready. And so we're excited again for the graduates. We're excited for those who will be returning to our schools, and we're doing everything necessary to provide the resources and energy to make sure that it's a good start for next school year. I think the last item I'm going to touch on is something that I think needs to be said. This is regarding security measures created by Gallup McKinley County Schools months ago that was given out to our principals. There's a bit of a frenzy lately with some parents about these new rules that we're enforcing for safety measures in our school district. And so I want to talk a little bit about that this evening, and then afterwards I'll stand for questions. As everybody knows, if you pay attention at all, the world's a different place than it used to be. We have, even in our own community, we have had our own set of threats. I think every school district that I know of, I've ever talked to a superintendent about, has had threats, especially copycat type threats even after some of the shootings that have taken place. We've had shootings even in our neighbors' communities, up in Aztec, and other tragedies across the country that have affected even Gallup. And so for the conversation, as I've read in the paper, somebody sent me, created by a few people to be about whether their child can go to a school dance at another school that they're not enrolled in, I think is unfortunate that is the conversation. Every school, our school district, has every right to do whatever we can to make our staff and students feel and be safe. And Gallup McKinley County Schools is trying to increase and improve the safety of our students by enacting stronger security measures in a variety of ways. There's not just one, there's several, and there'll be more. For some people to try and twist the purpose of one or any of the many new security measures to make it about something it is not is also disturbing. We will continue to listen to law enforcement and other safety experts and work to find ways to improve safety and security on our campuses regardless of a few people's disagreement. One of our concerns, and this is also a major concern for law enforcement that they expressed to us the last time that we met in a special meeting, is being able to and how well we can recognize, control, and monitor who is in our school, who is on our school campuses at all times, whether it's during school or after. And this is a complicated problem. Typically, schools are very open to the community, and you want it to be that way. You don't want it to feel like a prison or something that people can't be a part of. But there are a lot of people currently that have too much access. Schools and their property are way too open for people to come in. And so we've enacted restrictions to better manage access to our schools and events, and it's a high priority for not only for our administration, but also for our school board. And with these restrictions, people will not always get what they want. We encourage all schools or entities in the community we support all of them as they work to increase safety and security at their workplace or school site. We all have areas to improve in, and I'm not going to be the one that casts stones at these entities for improving safety, even if it means less access for me or anybody else. I think some people, it's easy to look at a few and not look at the whole. Some people are able to advocate for their student, and they have every right to do so. GMCS has over 11,000 students and over 1,800 staff members that we also have to look over and recognize collectively. And so we will continue to advocate for them when it comes to safety. Even though we currently have almost unlimited access to our events, all of our public and non-public events will have greater restrictions and or additional safety measures in the future, even other than the ones that we've released so far. If a few parents are concerned about what extracurricular services their school provides or does not provide, then the conversation shouldn't be involved talking to us about that. You should talk to your own school administration about that. If they are not meeting your needs by providing dances, events, and other activities, then why not? Those are the questions that you should be asking. You're asking the wrong people. As I listen to the community, I'm sure the board members have also heard this from a few. I hear a lot of positive things about things that we're doing as a school district with regards to safety. Way more positive than negative, which is a good thing. It means we're heading in the right direction. But I also think disparaging remarks regarding what we're trying to do for school safety is inappropriate. You can say hateful things about me or about the school board. That's fine. You can call us bullies. You can call us liars. You can claim that you're being victimized by GMCS. You can be dishonest when you're saying that we don't allow students to play sports in our schools, which we do. It's a state law, actually. You can kind of say whatever you want. For me, I believe in the end of the day, the longer everyone watches what's happening with respect to this particular topic, while a few create that own victimization of themselves for personal gain, I think the more people will see through the agendas and actually will be able to see what is really being represented here. So that's something I wanted to state for the public, for the newspaper, if they want to print that. I also hope that they print something regarding the raises for our staff. I think that's important for our community and for our individual staff members and also our students. These are the people we hire to be in our classrooms, and we have a more competitive advantage when we're able to hire higher quality with higher pay and attract them. Any questions?
Mr. Hyatt, I have a quick question. Can you go into any specifics about some of these? I mean, really, I don't know what else to call them other than exciting changes with security. I mean, it sometimes kind of stinks, but if it means protecting the kids, it's very important. It's really important to me. Can you maybe go into detail on some of these restrictions that are going to be in place there to, I guess, help protect our students?
There are several. There's been 2 memos that have gone out. There will be further ones that will go out regarding what we're going to do as far as security measures, and we are still looking at some measures that are a little more controversial that we are investigating to see whether that's going to be a good fit for our school district. There are several. I'll try to list them off the top of my head, the many different kinds of things we are doing. I think the $3.2 million in security cameras, door access systems, doorbell buzzer systems, I think that's a huge investment. I think by the end of this school year, we'll have about $4.5 million over the last few years spent on school electronic security. Every single school, when school is in session, anybody that comes up to the school from now on, we have asked all principals to make sure there's a one point of access, and we'll require that also through a door buzzer system. Somebody will actually have to kind of like ring the doorbell. There's video and there's voice so that somebody inside can communicate to make sure that person should be entering the school. So that means locking all of our other school doors. And in some campuses that's difficult because multiple access points for our schools. We also are looking at one-point access for school campuses. Some are easier. It's easier for some schools than others just because of the way that they're laid out. In order to create one point of access where people drive in to the property in the first place, and there's not multiple places where they can walk or drive in. And so that's going to take some effort as far as fencing and other things. What they state in some of our trainings and also from the state of New Mexico is you got to be as big of a deterrent as possible for people not to want to come onto your campus and do any harm to anybody. And so those are some of those things as far as structurally. We're also looking at the way we construct school buildings, how we place windows, what it looks like when they enter the school, what can they see from the outside, playgrounds, materials that are used in school buildings. Those are those things that we'll look at when we design the next 2 schools, Tehachapi High School and also Red Rock. We've also doubled the amount of trainings that we're providing as far as for lockdowns within schools than the state requires. We're also requiring that people receive what we call ALICE training. It's threat training for all staff every single year. That is not a requirement of the state, but we feel it's vital. We utilize law enforcement. We also use Red Rock Security to provide that training for us. We're looking at individual classrooms. How can we, in the case of an event that happens in a school, how can we protect students in that environment? So making sure that you're able to lock doors quickly is one. We have not several, but some schools that have classroom doors that open outward instead of inward. So you don't want people stepping out into the hallway. And so we're trying to figure out ways in which we can better secure doors so that people aren't entering the hallways in case of a tragic event. We're looking at, the police mentioned also things in the classroom, for example, even having first aid kits, for example, in every single classroom. Working with law enforcement is a big issue. We've already met with them on several occasions to talk about other things that we can do better. Again, their biggest concern is whether you know whether there's students or who's on your campus at all times. So being able to recognize people, and I think that's a key point you have to understand. When we enforce these rules, they're to make sure we know who is on campus. We're able to recognize them easily if people are on campus, and to make sure that we can monitor that. And that can be difficult, again, because there's many points of access. And so, they had several recommendations about whether it's clothing, who can access, who comes on your campuses, during what time, what hours, school IDs. I've left a few of those things up to school principals to figure out for their own schools, and they'll report that to me and we'll get approval. But we've got to know who's on our campuses. We've got to know who's there at all times, and whether that's during school or after school. And sometimes you have to restrict more, because if not, then you're picking and choosing who comes on your campuses, and you're not being equitable or fair.
Can you, I'm sorry to
Sure.
cut you off. The difference between public and private activities that you're restricting access to, can you go into detail on that?
Sure, anything where it is for our students, I would consider that a non-public event. So if the public is not invited. Like a basketball game would be a public event. And that's a high concern of ours also. How do you protect people in those? We're not just protecting students and staff, but we're also protecting community members. And so you have to look at, those are a little more difficult, and how much resource you have to monitor who comes in your buildings and make sure they don't have anything that's dangerous is a big concern of ours, and we haven't enacted any rules yet on that. But our non-public events like assembly or a pep rally or a school dance or another student activity, could even be a carnival or a festival. We have to look at who are we going to allow in, and how are we going to monitor who comes in, and again, as far as the structure and the doors, how are we going to keep people out that shouldn't be in. With respect to, I think the hot topic is dances. It's been pretty open. I think it's been concerned for many years. I've had the concern since I've been a principal. We have a lot of not only students but graduates that have already left high school that come back for dances. And how do you monitor that? And again, you start picking who comes, who doesn't come, and then you start getting yourself in a situation where it's actually probably better. And that's what I decided to do, is to restrict access except just for our students that are enrolled in our school district. Because we can monitor those. We have oversight over those individuals. And unfortunately, somebody from another state like Arizona or wherever in New Mexico will not be able to participate. So.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mortensen and Mr. Hyatt, for your report. I have a couple of questions and a couple of recommendations. The first one is on, you were saying when we talked about the safety issues and the floor plans of our schools, I would like, because I looked at the floor plans for Thoreau Elementary, but this was before all this discussion on safety. So I would like to request law enforcement or the people that were here at the meeting, the public meeting that was here, to relook at our floor plans at Thoreau Elementary, to give their input on safety concerns. That's my first request. The other request is, I know when we had the special meeting in the back by the Indian Education Department, we had Sheriff Mariano give us a whole list of things that he had a concern about in several of our schools that he did training in. One of them was in Tohatchee area. There were several concerns he had. I know you mentioned first aid kits, but that was just, I think, 1 out of 9, I think it was. I don't know how many he listed. And I've always wanted to go back and have a follow-up meeting, and I don't know, I keep requesting, I'll request again tonight to come back and have a follow-up meeting on that. But that is my other question. Have those requests from Sheriff Mariano been addressed? The security about the being changed and having the one access, I'm also worried about the portable buildings. I know that was another concern, especially at Thoreau High School. We have, I don't know, several portables still. How are we going to access them? And how are the doors going to be locked there? And I know we also have issues with ventilation, cooling, and so they leave their door open because during the summer, it's too hot in those portables. And, you know, I'm just really concerned about the portables also. The other thing, we already answered that one. But those are mine right now, sir.
Sure, Mr. Mortensen, Mrs. Manuelito. With respect to, and if I didn't catch all your questions, please remind me, but the first one I believe is about the design of Thoreau Elementary. We could go back into redesign of that school, but it's already been paid for and it's a done deal. We would have to, if we were to do anything different with that school dramatically, like the way hallways are laid out, if it's something simple, we might be able to adjust. We may have to pay extra for that, which is fine. But as far as redesigning the school would delay it at least another year. So it's unfortunately a bit late for that school, in my opinion. But that doesn't mean that we can't address one-point access for that school site. It'll still get all the safety, electronic safety devices that every other school has or will have. So, Sergeant Mariano gave a list of things. Most of the things we'd already either started or were doing, but there were a few items that I would point out that he suggested that were not suggested by other law enforcement. One of them being the first aid kits in classrooms. I think that was the first thing he mentioned that we should have in every single area of our schools. He also mentioned specifically about the one-point access. They all said they believed our schools were safe, but they were still worried about who can access our school sites, whether onto the property or into the schools. And with the electronic access, again, that lessened their fears. But their concerns were reaction time for law enforcement to get to rural areas and also limiting who can get onto the campus itself in the first place. The access from portables is a concern. Like I said, there's different layouts in different buildings at different school sites. And so how you control access to those areas and how do they get into the building, et cetera, is going to be a little bit different from school to school. We've talked about different ways in which we can get students into the building even if we have all the doors locked, about certain kids have cards or there's a certain way that they can access the building. We also have the availability with a few extra dollars. We could even do fingerprint access to the doors. That way all students that go outside or all students in the school during certain times of the day could actually use their fingerprint to access. That's some options. We also are looking at the fencing regarding those areas also. Are they wide open? Can people enter from the fields behind in our rural areas, or is there a fence that stops people from getting to our portables that are behind schools? And so those are some different things that we're looking at. Again, it's going to be different from school to school.
Mr. Vice President?
Go ahead, Mr. Mitchell. I was going to.
Am I on here? Just what I've seen with our administration as far as safety issues after meeting several times with law enforcement and different entities as far as concerns with safety. I think that, Gallup McKinley County is doing a great job in trying to address these issues, especially with the money that we have. And I know the public doesn't know that, we do not get assistance from the state for a lot of the security stuff that we need, such as cameras, alarms. Those are all things that are paid for out of our school district. So I think that the strides that we are making are great. And I think at this point, I think our kids and our communities can feel safe at this time and know that we are, working hard to address all the concerns of safety issues.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell.
I have one more comment I want to
Mr. Hyde.
make. Typically don't respond to public comments, but I think this will clear up some confusion. I know the school board knows this, but I know there's lots of things happening, and sometimes things get conflicted. And I just wanted to make sure that it was also mentioned that the board's decision for revocation has nothing to do with the school grade of middle college. I think that's vitally important for people to understand. The revocation has to do with material weaknesses that have been found and that we're continuing to find. The the school grade actually affected the school board whether to raise the number of students by 20 on both requests. That was a factor. It wasn't all of it. It was part of the reason why it was not raised the second time it was requested. So I want to make sure that's very clear for the public.
Thank you, Mr. Hyatt.
Mr. Hyatt, I just wanted to kind of add to that too. This is not, we had concerns. I had concerns, Mr. Mitchell had concerns when I first became a board member 3 years ago of Middle College. And those concerns, I still repeated them again when they came to us again to increase to 20. So to hear that these concerns are new is not correct. We both addressed our concerns, and it didn't improve. So again, I really wanted to say that because I don't want us to continue to say, oh, well, this just happened just because now that McKinley Academy is happening. No, this was issues that we arise previously 3 years ago, and that they haven't improved. And I still want to know what happened to those funds when we did do the 30 kids increase. And I would like to have us review their budget when we did do that increase, because I'm concerned where those monies went. It didn't go to transportation. We know that because that was an issue that we had, and it didn't go out to reaching more kids. I don't know, but I would like to know the increase, because they do get more per student than we do as public school, and I just wanted to also get that clarification of their budget, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Manuelito. I'm guessing that all of these facts are going to come to light in the future as we conduct whatever business we have going forward. Is there any other questions for Mr. Hyatt on his report? Okay, then we'll go ahead and go on to number 2. Do any of the members of the board have anything, I guess, of value?
One more question, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I know we had grants for that we apply for I don't want to say bonuses, but incentives, or what was it we're calling them. Are we still going to be applying for those this coming year for school-wide, because we've done some school-wide with the increase of performance, and also for teachers that have met? Are we also going to be doing that this year, sir?
Mr. Mortensen, Mrs. Manuelito, every year the state has, over the past few years, released those kinds of incentives for us to apply for. They've been a bit slow this year of releasing several things for us to apply for. We're hoping that there is some of those opportunities for us, and we will apply when they become available. Going back a little bit, but not yet. They haven't been made available for us. You're speaking, for example, for our futures, which was one of those pots of money for exemplary teachers, and et cetera.
Yeah.
We did receive some money for recruitment this year that we were able to use to help better recruit. I can't remember, it was between, how much money was that, Ms. Hanks? It was approximately $26,000-ish.
You could just yell. There's not a microphone.
And I'll also add, going back to Mr. Mitchell's question or comments regarding funding, they actually released, I think it was approximately $20 million to request for security. While we appreciate that and we will apply, if you factor in that Gallup McKinley County Schools probably last year and a half and through this next year will spend approximately $5 million or $4.5 million. That will help, but there are huge security needs across the state. So We do appreciate it. We will apply for it. Every little bit counts and helps. But again, you're right. There is not funding that's provided for us for security. We also spend about $750,000 right now just on security for school sites. We'd like to increase that. But again, this is all funding that comes from pots of money that security was not the intended purpose in some cases.
I have a question then. If the state is putting out, going to be releasing that, what would you say, $20 million? As we build new schools, are we going to be able to have the security cameras, security alarms, and anything that we need to pay for put into place at the time they're being built now, or do we have to have the school built again first and then add?
Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Mortensen, Mr. Mitchell, currently adequacy does not involve security, other than they've started to do buzzers with respect to entering the school, not video buzzers, but just a regular buzzer where people ring and then somebody can let them in electronically. But the PSFA, again, was out here a month or so ago, and they were doing a report of the things that they're learning as they travel across the state, and also listening to national experts of what can be done better in the construction of schools. And that's something that was discussed and that we talked about, and they relayed to us is an item that they want to request from the council, that they do include at least some chunk of electronic security funds for each school building. Again, they are still kind of doing their tour and wrapping up together all of the input that they've received, and so no decisions have been made. But that is something that I think is very important, that we're not putting security in out of our student educational funds when the state really should be building buildings with these security features already in them. Now, every district's different, so it'll probably be money potentially that we receive that we decide how it's used. For example, there are some things that Camado, south of us, is going to need differently as far as security than, say, Miamira High School. And so there's different needs. And so it probably won't be a one-size-fits-all, but we're hoping that there's funds available for construction.
Do you know when the tour ends?
I believe it already ended, but I haven't seen a report from that yet. I'm assuming that when I see their agendas, I'll be able to see when they're going to discuss what they're going to add to adequacy, and I think it would be valuable for us to be there in support of those changes.
And if there's not that, I don't know how to say it, but if there's something that we need to suggest to our leaders in Santa Fe to use as a legislative priority to our scope of, as our board priorities, is that something that we can consider after we see that report?
Mr. Mortensen, Mrs. Manuelito, I expect that there will be several security bills that either are being developed now or will be developed, and I think that we just need to watch those closely to decide if there's something, if they're meeting the needs that we feel are needed in our state, and if they're not, then we can look at legislation ourselves. But we will watch that closely. There is a lot of concern on this topic. I expect it to be pretty thorough, given there's several charters, 100+ charters probably in 89 school districts. They're looking at school safety as far as their platform. So,
Thank you, Mr. Hyatt. Let's, ladies and gentlemen of the board, let's move down into notices and communication and the approved 4-state trips. If you have any questions about any of that stuff, please ask of Mr. Hyatt. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and move into new business. Number 6A, approval of memorandum of agreement between GMCS and Reader to Reader, Inc. Mr. Hyatt, is there somebody, someone who is presenting for this?
Mr. Mortensen, Dr. White will come up and address this action item. It's deceiving, I know.
Thank you. Mr. Mortensen, Mr. Hyatt, members of the board, the first is a memorandum of agreement with Reader to Reader Incorporated. Reader to Reader is a program from David Mazer, who is located out with, what was the college? The college, I'll get to it. But basically what they're doing with Reader to Reader is they want to come out and help the students at the high schools at Navajo, Thoreau, Crown Point, and Tohatchee, work with them on what they call a blueprint for success. And it's a one-year program. The first semester they're going to be working with the senior class. And basically working with the senior class, they're going to be preparing them for the ACT, looking at college applications, requirements, scholarships, and really working with the seniors in those schools for first semester to get them ready and prepared for college admissions. The second half of this school year will be devoted with working with juniors. The juniors, they're going to be looking at their own college and career readiness. What does it take in your, because they have 1 year, as seniors, they'll have an additional year to work with the students as far as not only the ACT, but looking at other testing options. They do have a program in place called the Blueprint for Success curriculum that they use. So the Reader to Reader organization is willing to have somebody come to the schools twice a week for first semester for seniors and then second semester for juniors to help them get a better handle of what they want to do as once they are approaching graduation for seniors and then planning for their senior year when they are juniors. So basically this is an overview of what Reader to Reader agreement is. Do you have any questions on this one?
Is there anything that we can do to get these folks to include the rest of our high schools in their scope? Why are they only at the high schools mentioned in here?
Mr. Martinson, members of the board, we're going to start small, and the schools that are chosen are the smaller high schools. We're going to look at how well they're doing the program and where the kinks will be, so we can iron out those and expand later.
So it's kind of a pilot program, but there is plans to expand to the entire district?
Yes, it is.
My other question to that is, I think that I would like to know, I think some of these things that are provided, like the ACT prep, scholarship, and I think there's more resources in the inner city schools than out in the rural areas where these schools are. Because we have searched for ACT. I mean, we had to budget it out of our own center to try to find resources, and I think, but I'm glad of what Mr. Mortensen said, because I do believe that if we can extend funding to the other high schools, Rama, and other areas, I think that would be very essential to them also. So I would really look at extending this, like what you said. So I really appreciate that they'll be looking at other schools, other high schools.
Thank you, Ms. Manuelito.
Are there any other questions?
How will we be? How will the board be kept informed about how this is working? Would they come in after the first part of the school year to let us know how things went with the seniors, and then a report done with how the juniors were affected and how well the program is, or how will they be reporting?
We plan on reporting at the end of the semester. Like I said, the first semester we'll be working with seniors, so we can give a report on what type of services the seniors receive and where they're at as far as the 4 schools. And then in May, or probably in June, when school is over, we'll report on the seniors, the juniors, I'm sorry, and how well they worked with the organization.
Thank you.
Ms. White, can you include in your report, when you come back, can you include in your report, maybe something, I'd like to see how effective the program is, baseline ACT scores compared to, what they looked like after we had this help out there.
Sure, of course, Mr. Martinson.
Any other questions? All right, do I have a motion from the board?
I think this is a good program, and so I would like to make a motion that we approve the Reader to Reader memorandum of agreement.
Joan, we've had a motion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen.
Yes. Next item of business is B, approval of the revised Indian policies and procedures.
Mr. Mortensen, members of the board, I'll again turn the time over to Dr. White to present on this action.
Thank you, Mr. Hyatt, Mr. Mortensen, members of the board. What you have in front of you is the revised Indian policies and procedures. We were notified from the U.S. Department of Education that the Indian policies and procedures, the IPPs, that was submitted and approved back in December and submitted with the Title VII application was outdated. It wasn't in compliance. So our school was one of other schools, districts as well. So we attended a webinar, and basically they gave us templates. This is how you're going to fulfill. You just put your name in the dotted line kind of thing. So we had to have approval once we did the draft, approval from the U.S. Department of Education, which was done in May 18th by our program analyst for our district. And if you look at the impact, the draft policies, I can go over the main components of that on the next piece. Under what's new is under Indian policies and procedures, we have to specify a preferred method of communication. So when we're working with parents, when we're working with Navajo Nation and Zuni Pueblo, we have to ask them, what language do you want us to use, or what kind of method of communication would best work for you? And those are listed right there. And then the first policy, policy number 1, is information coming out from the district to the parents and the community, and looking at all applications, evaluations, program plans, and all information regarding the federal programs that are listed under Procedures 1.1. So through ESSA, all federal programs have to have some type of feedback session with parents and tribes. So that's where those are all listed. So if we have more programs, by all means, we're going to include them. Excuse me, on page 2, Procedures 1.2, this is how the district will work with disseminating information. Right now, under the current system, we go to chapter houses. So we present during the chapter meetings or before a chapter meeting of our federal programs. And what that does is, we presented, for example, we presented to Vicente chapter. So that means we presented to the folks in Vicente. Now we can't get back around to Vicente chapter until the next 5 years if we're lucky, if we hit all the other chapters. So that leaves a lot of the community out there wondering what's going on. So instead of doing chapter by chapter, we said we're going to visit 6 regions. We divided the regions, for example, in Crown Point region, Theru, Raymond, Navajo, Tohatchi, and Gallup. So we're going to be meeting in regions twice a year. So we get an opportunity to not only to present the information, but also get feedback from the community members twice a year, whereas over here is once every 4 or 5 years we go to each community. There's also going to be public hearings, and we're going to be advertising a lot when these will be scheduled. We also have semi-annual meetings that we're going to be working with. We have 2 parent committees now. One is the Indian Education Committee, and then there's a District Parent Advisory Committee. So we're going to be presenting twice a year to that organization, the 2 organizations as well. And then for our Navajo Nation and Zuni Pueblo leaders, we're going to be meeting with them on a quarterly basis instead of once a year.
Quick question for you about this policy number 2 here in regards to these meetings and hearings and things like that. Can we double up on any of these things just by covering some of these things in our normal school board meetings and inviting folks to our school board meetings?
Sure, we can do anything under the school board meeting. We can then have a special session on that if we want to.
It
And
might
that's
make
part of it there is, part of it is for input. So what we're doing on policy 1 is the information coming out from the district out there. So policy number 2 is the input. So when we present out there what comes back, and that's part of on procedure 2.1 is where we said regular school board meetings. So parents and community members can come in just like we have comments from the public. They can come in and say this is a concern, and we're willing to listen to that. And then
Mr. Mortensen, I just wanted to ask, Is there a deadline on when this needs to be approved by? And the reason why I'm asking is, when I was on the Indian Education Committee, this policy, we sat down with parents and tribal leaders to put this policy together. I don't want a document that is generated by central office and given to the parents to say, okay, well, it's done, you guys approve it. I want it to be a cooperative document, and this policy and procedure to be put together in that way, instead of us dictating to our parents, this is what you're going to do, and this is what the district's going to do, or this is how it's going to be laid out.
Ms. Manuelito, I think this agreement is between our school board and the tribal leaders, not the parents, I believe.
I understand that, but we helped put this document together before, then we presented it to our tribal leaders, because instead of us saying, this is, the administration saying, okay, this is what we generated, it was an effort from parents and other entities that got together and did it. And I also would like to request to see the old IPP and compare it to this. I know it's a new format. I know that you got your directions from U.S. Department of Education, but I would usually, when there's new added things, there's a strike through, there's things written in red for me to compare what's changed. If not a whole new form, then I still would like to see the old one to see how this is really changing, because this is going to be a legal document, and this is something that we're going to be sticking to for the IPP. And I know, I believe, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's still going to be a working document, but I would getting a president of the Navajo Nation and Zuni, you know, to continue to approve it would be hard. So I would like those two, and for us to review also.
Ms. White, is there a way to get Ms. Manuelito and some of our other parents involved with, you know, in bringing these policies up to snuff according to the U.S. Department of Education?
Ms. Manuelito and Mr. Mortensen, members of the board, what I have done is once we got the template given to us, I worked with Ms. Moffett, who oversees the Indian Education Committee, and just working with her because she's had experience in this process as well. And if you look at the cover page, the main differences are listed right there, and those are the 4 main goals of what we were told from the district. Number 1, the need for more tribal consultations. So right now we go to our tribal consultations as needed, and especially when we have the IPPs to be approved, we go over there. But this is going to be with quarterly, we're looking at quarterly tribal consultations, so it's an ongoing. So they may approve it now, but once the tribes say that we need a little bit more of this or a little bit less of that, they have that option. So this is a living document that can be revised as it's going. So it's not like, okay, you approved it, now it's stuck forever. It's got to be, it's a living document. And not only do we get feedback from tribes, but also the parents. On bullet number 3, more opportunities for feedback from parents and community members. Like I said, you know, we went to 1 chapter and that was it, and we didn't see them again for the next couple of years. But in this one, we have 6 regions. We divided the school district into 6. For example, Tohatchi and Thoreau. We are going to be going into that area and inviting all the chapters and the parents in the community that live in those areas to come to those meetings, and it's twice a year. It's not just once a year. It's going to be twice a year we're going to be hitting all the 6 regions. And also we have a district parent advisory council, Indian Education Committee. They're not excluded. They still have a feedback session in there. We're going to be giving them information as well and asking for their feedback. So the Indian Education Committee, the Parent Advisory Council, they're not excluded. They're part of the process. And again, just like the parents and the tribes, they're going to be visited twice a year. So and then there's also going to be a website that we're going to develop for the district, because all parents go to meetings, but they visit the district website and they get a lot of information from that. So not only are we going to be publicizing that, but we're going to be looking at documentation that we're presenting to the regions on that website, so they also have know what's going on, and they'll also have opportunities for feedback.
Ms. White?
Yes.
I appreciate your time with this. It's obvious that you've spent a lot of time on this. I think it might make sense, ladies and gentlemen of the board, if maybe we tabled this until Ms. Manuelito had more of an opportunity to look at it in depth and maybe provide some input. You know, I think some of these discussions are probably best for offline and not necessarily, you know, for hashing out details of this type of an agreement here in our board meeting. Would you agree?
Mr. Mortensen, I feel better with her justification and that it is a living document. And I still, I would want to take action tonight on it.
Okay, please suggest a motion.
But I would also like to request that we do get the 2017-2018, the previous version, just for my sake and my records, that we do have. I have that on record, but I would like to motion to approve, just for the clarification that Dr. White did provide to me, that it is a living document and these entities were consulted.
Perfect. Joan, we have a motion to approve. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen?
Yes. Next item of business is C, approve revisions to board policy section, I don't know, I'm not going to read that part, use of technology resources in instruction, and approve the internet safety policy. I believe this is Ms. Hanks.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Hanks? Just yelling.
Mr. Mortensen, members of the board, Superintendent Hyatt, in reviewing our internet safety policies, we did notice that we needed to make some minor modifications to the policy. This will keep us in compliance with the Children's Internet Protection Act, as well as requirements under the FCC. This will ensure that our district is in alignment for the E-rate funding that we receive. So I did attach the prior policy, the new proposed policy, an internal policy that details further on the district side what we will implement, and then also a copy of the Children's Internet Protection Act as given by the FCC. I will stand for any questions.
Ms. Hanks, in general, can you tell us maybe where the policy was beefed up or loosened up?
Well, what we actually did was put some specific language that was required through upgrades in there. In the actual internet safety policy itself, you will notice some specific information in there regarding protection of children's in the terms, what a minor is, our technology protection measures, what we deem harmful to minors that will be excluded from allowability within the district system. Those specific things being spelled out in our policy.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hanks. Are there any other questions? Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
I make a motion that we approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Joan, please, roll call.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen?
Yes, I see Ms. Manuelito back there. Okay. The next one we have here is D, to approve the scope of work for lobbyists. Do I have a motion? Or I guess do you have something to explain with this, Ms. Hanks?
Mr. Mortensen, members of the board, Superintendent Hyatt, no. This is a detailed scope of work that would be included for requesting information from lobbyists That information would be provided to the Board of Education at our first board meeting in July for review.
Okay. Are there any questions from members of the board?
Yes.
Go ahead, Ms. Manuelito. Don't talk with your mouth full.
Sorry about that. I had to do some running around. I have a couple of questions, actually. Let me turn to that page, sorry. So are we, I want to know, is this an RFP that we're advertising now to get RFPs from lobbyists that we're sending out now?
Ms. Manuelito, members of the board, no, this would not be an RFP. Historically, our services have not reached that monetary threshold. And so what this would do would allow me to send to lobbyists out within the state, including individuals we've worked with in the past, and ask them for a quote on what they would charge for these types of services. And I'm open to any amendment to the language that's been provided. I did include the prior scope of work that we've utilized. I also reviewed several other scopes of work from across the state of New Mexico and across the country to try to be as comprehensive as possible while looking at the changing and evolving needs of our board as far as lobbying services are concerned.
Is there any, Ms. Hanks, is there any aspect in here of maybe what experience they might have with the Navajo Nation as well?
Absolutely. We have asked in here, and this would be the written document that would go out to individuals, so all individuals would be given the same information for a request for quote. We have asked them to provide organizational qualifications, any additional services, and a list of existing clients.
So I'm sorry, Ms. Hanks, but I'm really confused of, do we do this every year? I mean, I don't know why we're doing this now. So if you could just answer why. I don't understand. Are we just reaching out to more? Are we, I don't know why we're doing this now.
Sure, essentially we are reaching out. I'm asking to have these back, if the board approves this evening, that I would have these back no later than June 22nd, and the information would be provided back to the Board of Education for a discussion on the July 23rd board meeting.
So having it back from who? From us?
Any vendors. So if this is approved, this would go out to all lobbyists. They would then submit back to us what they would charge for these services. That's going to be provided to the board, and the board could make a decision regarding available vendors for the services we're seeking.
So we want to hire additional lobbyists.
No, this would be the lobbyist for the Gallup McKinley County School, unless the board had additional need for other services.
So the scope of work that we're looking at now, is it different than that we have currently?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I guess I'm going to ask, can I have a copy of the current scope of work and the difference in this and now, and what happens also to the current contract that we have with our lobbyists now?
Sure, Ms. Manuelito. So annually, as we look through vendors and services that are going to be provided, that contract will end. And again, they may become our lobbyist again, but that would give the board a chance to look at all available services and make a decision.
So when does their contract end?
I believe it ends at the end of this year, although they may, as a matter of fact, I do apologize. I believe they're off fiscal year, so they would end.
I believe it's November.
Yeah, in November, because we are on an odd fiscal year with our current contract.
So this is just something we do annually?
Yes.
No.
Let me speak to this. This was a request from the school board members to put this on the agenda. So this is not something the district is putting together. This is not an annual event. This came from a request.
So who came up, if this is a board, then I'm a board, and I want to know who requested it, and what is their justification for it. and where did they come up with the scope of work that are listed here?
Oh, Mr. Mortensen, Ms. Mangalito, I'll answer the second question, and I'll let Mr. Mortensen answer the first question. As far as the scope of work, when it was brought to us to put as an action item, we just went and found what a scope of work could be for a lobbyist, and that's what we're presenting to you. We're not saying it has to be this. Because it was an action item for scope of work, it's up to the board to decide what that scope of work looks like. We just provided something for you to look at, and it can be adjusted.
I'll address the second one. Mr. Long and he's not here, and we may want to wait and vote on this or take action when he gets back and we're able to discuss it fully. Mr. Long and I had visited a little bit about our lobbyists and what they do for us, and wanting to look out in the market and see if they were the best ones for our needs, or if there was anybody else out there. It just simply is a matter of looking and seeing what else is available, and if there is somebody that might suit our needs better.
Okay, Mr. Martinson, thank you for that clarification, but
Sure.
you know, I don't mind going out and doing this properly and finding a scope of work, and I think if this is a board thing, then it should be a board initiative to where we do work out and we do talk to each other and say, you know, this is what we're doing, this is what we want to suggest, this is
That's why it's on the
something-
agenda, Ms. Manuelito.
There's already it's an action item. It's not even a discussion.
We're talking right now,
there-
discussing.
So with the scope of work that we have, and I thank you for the opportunity to look at it and make the adjustments needed, but I think the other thing that I'm concerned about, and I didn't even know this was going to be on here, and at one of the meetings at UNM, I had a lobbyist come up to me, introduce himself to me, and tell me that he's interested in applying for the RFP. And I didn't even know we were even reaching out to do an RFP. And he told me that Mrs. Lundstrom is the one that told him to come up to me and introduce himself. So if this is something that's going to be biased and something that's going to be favorable to a lobbyist that is going to be a potential person to be RFPing this, I think with him knowing, Mrs. Lundstrom knowing, and me as a board member not even knowing, is very fishy. And I don't like to be put on the spot like that and telling this gentleman and sending a text message to our superintendent saying, what is up with this? I don't think that's how we should be working as a board. I think a work session should have been also suggested to where we can work on this as a board and discuss this as a board, and not being put like this on and together. So I'm kind of upset.
No
I'll
problem.
admit.
Ms.
but-
Manuelito, let me explain a little bit. And I apologize for its feeling suspicious. There's nothing suspicious about it. This is a fairly generic scope of work. There is no RFP at this point. If Ms. Lundstrom asks somebody to come visit with you, you might want to talk to her about that. I don't have any juice with Ms. Lundstrom, and I don't tell her what to do. So at this point, this is a scope of work, and I'm glad that you agree with us and think it makes sense to go out into the market and see what best suits us. This is in no way a statement of the performance of our current lobbyist. It's just a statement of wanting to look in the market and see what else is out there. This is about competition, and it's about transparency. There's nothing sneaky about it. This is a generic scope of work. May the best man win, or woman. Do I have a motion for this? Ms. Manuelito, you said you agreed with going out in there. Would you like to motion to approve the scope of work?
Mr. Martinson, thank you for that. Yes, I do agree with us discussing this, but I do not agree with taking action on it. I would like to have time to review the scope of work and give my suggestions.
Great.
And our contract with our lobbyist doesn't end in until November, so I think this could be pushed back to a later date. So I would like to motion to table it and give us time to review the scope, even to do a work session on it, and do it to where we're all comfortable with it, because at this point, sir, I don't feel comfortable. So I would like to motion to table until we have a discussion, or a further discussion with, as a board, and a work session.
Ms. Manuelito, I think that's a good idea. We don't have our full board here, and so I think it probably makes sense to wait and talk about this more. In lieu of more meetings and a work session or something like that, it might make sense for you to review, or for each of us to review this scope of work and compare it to the other one, and maybe email or suggest some things. I think it's smart, and I hope you'll agree with me, I think it's smart to get out ahead of this stuff and not wait till October or whatever to start shopping for a lobbyist. We have massive needs in our school district, and I think it's smart of us to get out ahead of it and do what we can so that we have all the things in a row ready for that legislative session. It comes up, and it comes up fast. You've been in this long enough. I think you can agree. With that, we have a motion to table this action item. Joan, roll call, please.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Hanks. I appreciate
Thank you,
that.
Ms. Hanks.
I think now that we've agreed to table that, I think it probably makes sense. Let's just try to email a little bit back and forth some of this scope of work stuff so that we can try to put something together. And I think, just because if it goes out to bid or whatever, Ms. Manuelito, I think just because it goes out to bid doesn't mean we have to sign a contract with anybody before our other contract is up. We're not talking about breaking a contract here. We're just simply talking about getting everything in order so that we can start with whoever the best candidate is when the other contract ends. That's all.
I think that what we need to probably do is probably review the old one and compare it to this new scope, and write down all our ideas or our comments, and then come together as a board and discuss it. I don't think we're allowed to email back and forth to each other.
Is that true?
The other thing,
You can't make, you could give information, but you can't make a decision.
yeah.
So no decision would be made. It would just be a matter of helping us to share information more efficiently and try to refine our scope of work. I'm not talking about making a decision through emails. I'm just talking about refining the scope of work.
Thanks.
Mr. Shaw, Mr. Mortensen, Ms. Manuelito, Superintendent Hyatt, and other members of the board. So I can definitely email you the last several contracts, because it is something that we renew on an annual basis. And there have been some variations in the contract that we've done over time. I think with the technological changes that we've seen at the legislative level, where we have much more access to legislative documents much quicker, I think this scope of work, you may notice, is a bit more high-level analysis in working with the board and determining what our true legislative priorities are, and understanding those legislative processes so that we can get those priorities through the legislature as efficiently as possible with whomever the board decides to go with. The other thing that I would like to mention is that there are some statutes that deal with lobbying in the state of New Mexico, and so I will get those to Superintendent Hyatt as well, so that you guys can, those were taken into consideration as well when putting this together.
And I would like to know the year, how many years, if it is our contract year with the current lobbyist. I know, I don't remember. I know it just seems to me it was recently that we did that,
right.
and I don't know if it's a 1 year or 2 year contract, but I would like to see that. If you could forward me that
Absolutely.
contract.
And there are multiple variations of it, and the consulting firm that we have now has evolved over time with a couple of different members who have participated in that entity.
Mrs. Manuelito, I believe you're actually right. I think it was this last fall that we approved a 2-year.
2 years.
Mhm.
Yeah.
goes 2 year. But we, like I said, I just would like that clarification, and like Mr. Mitchell said, to have the other scope of work from the previous.
And I would, Joanna, I would like to have mine in black and white here and put in my mailbox. That way I can write on them and rather than just have it on email.
Absolutely.
Well, and then email me as well, but I would like a copy so I can make changes and write on
Absolutely.
them. Thank
Would
you.
any other member like a printed copy?
Email is better
I
for
can
me,
print it.
more
Okay.
efficient.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Board.
Ms. Hanks. Thank you very much. Our next item here is 6E, approval of purchase agreement for sale of Juan de Oñate Elementary School.
Oh, my goodness.
Can we get some explanation on this, Mr. Hyatt?
Sure, Mr. Mortensen, members of the board, I'm going to have one of your attorneys, Bob Rosenbro, come up and kind of give an overall timeline of how things have transpired. I've given you some information regarding this, and things moved rather quickly. So I'm going to let him take the reins on this and he'll be able to answer a lot of your questions regarding the state, the timeline, and how things move forward with purchases of property.
Great, now you broke it. It was working really good
Here we
before.
go. One point of clarification, Mr. Hyatt. Do you want me to get into the terms of the agreement for the board's information?
Colton.
Or would you prefer to do that in closed session?
I did not make an executive session for this topic.
Okay.
So
and I'm glad to...
We may have miscommunicated on that, or I may have miscommunicated. My understanding is that this would be public information that we could talk about. If there's something that shouldn't be talked about in public, then we can reserve that for some other time.
You have the option of being in closed session if you would prefer, but it would have to be noticed. But there's nothing to hide.
I don't have anything.
I'm glad to discuss the terms.
Sure. If you
Okay.
could start with how this evolved when you got involved with respect to the sale, also the timeline a little bit.
Sure. As you know, Washington Elementary and Juan de Oñate were closed and consolidated into Del Norte Elementary, which is now opened. The Washington Elementary School was demolished, and Del Norte was built immediately adjacent to the old Washington Elementary. Juan de Oñate Elementary, the facility remained standing and was not demolished as part of the new construction of Del Norte Elementary. The Juan de Oñate has no functional use for the district that I know of at this point. It is essentially excess real property inventory of the district. It is marketable property and could be sold and generate revenue. The district has received an offer from the New Life Apostolic Church, but prior to that offer, the district conducted an appraisal, and the appraisal was done by Brooks, Pearsall, and Zantow. The specific appraiser was Bruce Gunderson. Juan de Oñate Elementary has been required extensive security measures, and there have been some repeated break-ins into the elementary school, causing significant damage. The appraisal has come back with an as-is value of $395,000. There is also an alternate number which would require extensive renovations and repairs and maintenance to the school to bring it into its former condition, which would be $665,000. The offer that has been made by the New Life Apostolic Church is subject to several contingencies. The first contingency being that before the sale could close, it would have to be presented to the New Mexico State Board of Finance for approval. and approved by that board. Additionally, the purchaser is requesting the opportunity to do a full professional inspection of the property for a period of time, and once that's completed, if they accept the property in its condition, they will accept the property as is without requiring additional repairs or maintenance by the school. Another condition is that the city of Gallup would need to issue a conditional use permit for the property, allowing it to be, or making a decision that the use of the property as a church would be an appropriate use in that area of town. A final contingency is that the district has approved a tower site through a lease agreement with McKinley County on the northern boundary of the property, and the agreement would be contingent upon working out the terms with McKinley County for assignment of that lease to the new purchaser, or alternate arrangements agreeable to all three parties. The contemplated purchase includes 11 portables that are located on the property. With respect to closing costs and expenses of sale, the district, as the seller, would be required to pay title insurance. There is a realtor's commission involved. That would be the expense of the buyer in this transaction. The other significant expense would be a survey expense, which it's proposed that the survey expense would be split 50-50. The closing date is approved or is proposed to be 30 days after approval of the State Board of Finance. And those are the terms of the transaction. The buyer has submitted a written agreement and has signed and initialed it for the school board's consideration. If the board chooses to approve this purchase agreement, I would recommend also that the board consider naming a specific individual to sign the agreement on behalf of the board. And I'd be glad to stand for any questions.
Mr. Mortensen, members of the board, if I could add just a couple things, and I don't want to mess up the real estate lingo, so if I misspeak, please correct me. But originally, when we were looking at offering this building for sale, I took a guesstimate of what a good purchase price would be. I was off because of the vandalism. I didn't know how significant it was. But during that time, as we involved Mr. Rosenbrough in this, getting it ready to be sold, there was I think it was called an intent letter that was given by the same entity to the district, just letting us know that they were interested from hearing from what happened at the board meetings and the discussion on the sale of this property. So it wasn't like we went and found anybody. They had submitted, I think it was a letter of intent. Is that what
Yes.
it's called? Okay, letter of intent during this time. And then as soon as, and then they were in contact with Mr. Rosenbrough, and then they put in an offer once the appraisal price came in.
Are there any questions from the board?
When you say that, due to vandalism, the price came down, what are we doing to secure it so that no more vandalism happens to where it comes down even more?
Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Mortensen, Mr. Mitchell, we actually had secured it, and it was not done very well, and so there were break-ins, and then there was significant damage inside the building. We then went and welded the doors shut and put heavier duty plywood on the outside of that building to secure it, and that seemed to work better. We then had a fire started not too long ago on the outside of the building because there were still people trying to get in or hanging around the building. We then hired security 24/7 to monitor the building from that point forward. And so, yeah, it's a hot spot for people to go and vandalize. I don't know what the appraisal would have came in had it not been so significantly vandalized. I couldn't say. I was a little shocked, as some others are, that it was so low because of the size of the building and the land, but we used a reputable appraiser to do the work. So it is significant. I didn't bring pictures for you. If you want to go look at it, you're welcome to do so. Bring some grubby clothes. So a lot of glass, a lot of vandalism, a lot of trash and such.
One point on that that's also, I think, responsive to Mr. Mitchell's question is, one of the term of the purchase agreement is that if a purchase agreement is signed, that the buyer would have pre-closing occupancy and the responsibility of security prior to closing, and the buyer would also accept the risk of loss for additional damages between the signing of the purchase agreement and closing.
Are there any other additional questions? Okay. Do I have a motion from the board, please? Anybody? Any motions from the board?
A motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Joan, roll call, please.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito, Mr. Shaw,
No.
Mr. Mortensen,
Yes. All right. Thank you, Mr. Rowe.
I'll give the proposed agreement.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is an executive session, and we'll go ahead and break for executive session and be back in a few. Oh yeah, is there a motion to?
Motion to enter executive session.
Thank you. Joan, roll call, please.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen,
Yes.
7:58.
Out of executive session.
Okay, roll call, Joan, please.
Mr. Mitchell? Ms. Manuelito? Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen?
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, the only thing,
8:30.
sorry, excuse me. The only thing I have to report from executive session is that no decisions were made. Can we entertain a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
Joan, roll call, please.
Mr. Mitchell? Ms. Manuelito? Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen?
Yes.
8:31.